Imagine spending months or even years perfecting a flawless plot. You have mapped out intricate macro politics, given your characters compelling and nuanced character arcs, and if you have like written a fantasy novel, then you have built a world with airtight internal logic. Also say that you have put extreme effort into creating an amazing story, only for you to publish it and then receive terms like just entertainment, pop culture, or lesser art thrown at your book by the cultural gatekeepers. It's an incredibly frustrating experience, but it happens a lot of times. Like, it happens almost every single day. We have been conditioned to believe in this rigid divide between literary fiction and genre fiction. Literary fiction is considered as serious, deep, artistic, while a genre fiction, ranging everything from romance to thrillers to sci-fi to fantasy, all of it is considered as just commercial escapism. But as an author who writes under the genre fiction category, and as somebody who likes to deconstruct how a lot of these stories work, I'm here to tell you that this hierarchy is completely broken. Why do we sort of equate a slower, character-focused storyline or work with psychological depth, while treating a brilliant plot-driven narrative engine like it's mindless entertainment? Genre fiction doesn't lack depth. It, in fact, delivers it in under high pressure, in different circumstances. It explores the same things as literary fiction, like human psychology, trauma, societal themes, deep societal themes, but it also does that while keeping you awake up till like 3 a.m. Frankly, engineering a flawless plot twist requires just as much artistic genius as writing a beautiful 20-page monologue about, let's say, a window. Today, we are going to dismantle this literary hierarchy, the snobbery of a literary hierarchy, and let's talk about why plot is art, and why this entire hierarchy, why this looking down upon genre fiction is actually rooted in historical classism, and how stories we are told to dismiss are often the ones doing the heaviest lifting. Okay, let's get something straight right out of the gate. Okay, bad writing exists everywhere. It exists in genre fiction, and so does it exists in literary fiction. The difference is how we approach these sort of stories. A badly written fantasy novel, for example, would be called a cheap cash grab, or just following the trend, or just out there copy and pasting the same things. But on the other hand, a badly written literary fiction is often still, by a lot of people, considered as profound, uncompromising, life-changing, out of this world, artistic. We have mistaken this lack of plot for a presence of mind. During my time at the university, I definitely had my fair share of literary fiction that I read for certain courses at the university, and frankly, a lot of them mostly left me cold. Like, none of them forced me to grapple with massive themes in a serious way. They felt less like moving stories and more like academic exercises. On the flip side, I want to take example of Chinese historical dramas, which often are actually adapted from novels and stories. And if you know anything about them, like genre fiction, they have those repetitive established frameworks, the same political rivalries, or the same star-crossed angst, and the same recurring tropes. And yet, you and I, we both know we're still going to watch them or read them. Yet, these exact stories have forced me to think about human psychology, ethics, and morality that almost any piece of literary fiction, high literature that I was assigned in a classroom. Heck, in fact, a lot of children's literature that I read left more of a permanent dent on my soul than these books designed for the academic elite. This is no accident. This is the proof of a specific power that genre fiction has, and that is the power, the art of subtle messaging. I love subtle messaging. I love stories. I love when stories actually treat their audiences as geniuses, that they treat them in a way that they know that a hint is enough to tell them about a theme. They will just hint at a massive theme without throwing it directly onto your face. Genre fiction doesn't need its characters to stand on a stage and give a monologue for pages upon pages about the existential dread of life and death. No, it will just use the narrative engine, maybe a tense conversation, or a really perfectly paced action sequence, or a split-second physical reaction, or a quiet moment of painting. All of these, they plant the seeds of a theme subtly into the scenery and the plot and the intellectual thrill of deriving that meaning on your own without the author just standing on your shoulder and telling you what the meaning is, what the theme is. It's on a completely different level. That is how you rewire a audience's mind, a reader's mind. Why does subtle messaging work so flawlessly? Like, why is it that a beautifully engineered craft, beautifully engineered piece of genre fiction can keep you pacing your room in deep thought long after you have shut the book or the credits on a movie or a drama have rolled? It comes down to the sheer unadulterated power of entertainment. High art can stay up in its ivory tower all it wants, but the art that is on the ground, that will always have a greater impact on human culture. Entertainment is designed for the masses. It's accessible, it's immediate, and it hooks you by the throat. And that is exactly what gives it the upper hand when it comes to rewiring an audience's mind. I've talked about this before in my Substack articles and on my YouTube channel in the Dark Romance video. Storytelling that is designed as entertainment has the terrifying power of slipping ideas into your subconscious without you ever realizing the door was unlocked. When we pick up a dense literary fiction, or let's say an essay or anything that sounds academic, we already have our critical shields up. We are ready to be challenged. We know it's going to challenge us. We know it's going to make us think. So we are already in that phase. So our brains are directly, analyzing every sentence, looking at every sentence, and trying to take anything out of every single word. But when we settle in for, let's say, addictive fantasy novel, or a high-stakes C-drama, or a K-drama, or any movie, any story in genre fiction, we naturally lower our mental defenses. We tell ourselves, I just want to turn off my brain and I want to relax, just watch mindlessly. But here's the catch. When that wall of defense drops and your subconscious mind is wide open, you absorb the worldview, the ethics, and the messaging of the story completely unfiltered. Now, this is a double-edged sword. Keep that in mind, because on one hand, while it means that a story can sort of quietly shatter your ideas, build profound empathy, and completely reshape your worldview, it can, on the other hand, also mean you can easily fall for and absorb highly problematic or toxic ideas without noticing. And that is exactly why I consistently preach that entertainment must be consumed critically. And this brings me to the core irony of this literary hierarchy. A lot of people will look down upon genre fiction because they consider it as mindless entertainment, but they are missing the point. If you learn to consume entertainment critically, you will realize genre fiction's depth it's not just deep, it's vastly more impactful because it meets you when your guard is down. And the final most perhaps the most undeniable point in favor of genre fiction, I would say, is the raw and the ancient alchemy of storytelling itself. Think about how you consume entertainment, how you consume media. If you spend a lot of time on YouTube and your main source of entertainment is YouTube, then you will know that videos that hijack your attention completely usually have this narrative format. Think of your true crime documentary essays, deep dive video essays, or videos looking at some mysterious breakdown. All of these are engineered to sort of tell you a story, and naturally we are locked in until the very last second. Now, critics love to argue that social media has sort of completely rotted our brains, that we have developed such short attention spans that we simply can't handle the slow meditative pace of high literature. But I have to respectfully disagree. While I agree short form content has to some extent certainly fractured our focus, it does not explain why we will still binge watch like a 40 episode historical C-drama or stay up until dawn reading a 500 page fantasy novel. That's not because we don't lack attention. We lack a patience for stories that refuse to move. The truth is, humanity is been hardwired for narrative for 1,000 years. That it's like built into us that we react to stories differently. In fact, a lot of people say, and it's said, that a fact wrapped up in a story format is 22 times more likely to be memorable than just a straight statement or a dry statistic. That is why narratives that we love stay with us long after we have finished interacting with them. When we follow a fictional character through a harrowing plot, our brains stimulate their experiences, triggering a surge of neurological empathy that directly translates into how we treat people in real life. You can write monologues upon monologues in flowery poetic prose about prejudice, corruption, and how grief is devastating, but give your readers just one compelling, masterfully structured story that forces them to live through alongside a character. You will achieve more in that than those monologues will achieve in like a lifetime. That is the power of storytelling, to be able to reach the heart of someone else, the chest of another human being, and move their heart using just plot, pacing, and stakes. That is real art. A story doesn't need elitist prose or a 10-page philosophical breakdown. The architecture of the plot and the flesh and blood characters that are going through it are more than enough to tug at the strings of a human soul. Now, I want to clarify something important. In advocating for genre fiction, I am absolutely not saying that if you love reading literary fiction or if you like reading literary fiction, then you are boring or your taste is invalid. I'm not saying that. There is absolutely brilliant and deeply moving literary fiction out there. My issue is not with the books, but with the terminology that's used for these, like high literature, serious fiction, or artistic prose. They have little to do with actual art and more to do with historical classism. The strict division between literary fiction and genre fiction we see today, it's not new. It's definitely not new. It's actually a direct inheritance of the Victorian era. In the late 19th century, literacy rates started to rise among the working classes, and that resulted in this cheap serialized fiction exploding in popularity. The literary establishment of that time immediately panicked. They coined this derogatory term called penny dreadfuls, as in dreadfuls being sold for a penny, as this part of a wider campaign against cheap popular fiction that was widely read by the working classes. Sounds Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The gatekeepers back then seemed to use the exact playbook critiques used today against genres like romance, romantasy, fantasy, thrillers. At a time when political power was slowly shifting away from the wealthy, critics worried that these penny dreadfuls, these inexpensive stories that were full of crime, violence, and adventure would corrupt the readers or threaten social order. They turned popular storytelling into this focus of repeated moral panics, blaming these stories from everything from poor morals among the people to criminal behavior. It was simpler, much easier to blame these plot-heavy fiction than to fix deep systemic inequalities, making these stories sort of an easy scapegoat for deeper social and economic problems. The elite sort of dismissed these stories as badly written, harmful, and morally dangerous, even comparing them to high literature of that time, to the high literature of respected and canonized authors like Charles Dickens. But if we peel back the layers of history, we peel back on this and go deeper, the truth becomes obvious. These aggressive critiques, they weren't actually protecting art of the novel. No. In reality, these attacks reveal how unsettling it was for the cultural elite to lose control over what people read. The establishment was so terrified of these penny dreadfuls because they were not just cheap entertainment. They helped create a new shared popular culture and aggressively challenged traditional ideas about literature. And that historical class divide seems to simply happen rebranded today as the boundary between literary and genre fiction. Genre fiction is still to this day exclusive, casually dismissed as too commercial or for the masses. Awards like the Nobel Prize in Literature are almost exclusively awarded to literary fiction stories that most of the times the general populace has never heard of, and stories and books that actually capture the hearts of millions and shape modern culture. They are routinely ignored by prestigious award committees for some reason. Genre fiction is looked down upon because it carries the DNA of a style born from the ordinary people. Literary fiction is put on a pedestal because it carries the legacy of exclusivity. Originally designed by the educated elite for the educated elite, and that is the core problem. Like, it's completely fine to have categories to differentiate between different styles of storytelling, but the moment you start labeling one as high literature and other as mere entertainment, you aren't making a statement about quality. You're just practicing gatekeeping. You're perpetuating classism. What we need to do, both as readers and writers, is not to judge people based on the books that they read, that they consume. While it is okay to, it's fine to critically analyze the themes or tropes we consume, like I did in the dark romance video, looking down on someone for their choice of media is entirely uncalled for. We need to stop the defensive labels. Genre fiction isn't just entertainment, nor is literary fiction automatically boring academic prose. Both categories have their fair share of, absolute masterpieces and fair share of absolute misses. Instead of, placing these artificial borders, we should celebrate the stories that actually move us, the ones that anchor themselves in our hearts, force us to think differently, challenge us, and give us beautifully nuanced plots and characters. It shouldn't matter if the story has tropes, cliches, or if it uses dense poetic prose. If it leaves an impact, it's worthy of respect. Writing is a form of art. It's the storyteller, the writer is an artist, and the narrative that they build is their craft. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the Courtyard today. If you enjoyed this deconstruction of the fictionary binary, make sure to check out the rest of the videos on my channel. Also hit that subscribe button so you never miss a theory, and let me know your thoughts on this entire literary fiction and genre fiction binary in the comments below. Until next time, keep theorizing.